This is Anirban Ganguly, and this is his rally in Bolpur constituency in Birbhum, where he is contesting on a BJP ticket. Bolpur, a small town with a population of less than 1 lakh people, seems to have missed the development bus. We spoke to the women of the village where the BJP rally was held, and they complained about lack of toilets, basic drainage facility and town planning. But they didn't wish to speak on camera. While there seems to be disappointment towards the TMC, the central government's PM Jan Dhan lockdown scheme seems to have reached almost all households. Ganguly is hoping to win Bolpur on the goodwill of centre's welfare schemes and anti-incumbency sentiments against TMC. We spoke to him about his candidature and BJP ideology. Watch what he has to say.
Welcome to News Laundry Interviews. Today we are with Anirban Ganguly. He's the director of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, which is a nationalist think tank and affiliated with the BJP. He's also the national co-in-charge of the Library and Documentation Department of the BJP and a member of the Policy Research Department of the party. He's authored and edited books, including one on Amit Shah, and he is contesting the Bolpur seat from Birbhum, which is why we're here to interview him. Welcome. Given all your work with words and ideas, would you call yourself an intellectual? And how different has been your previous role in the BJP as a research policy guy to now asking for votes among people?
No, this is a completely new experience because as a preparation to this election for the last 6 months, we had launched a campaign which was called Lokho Sonar Bangla, the AIM Sonar Bangla, and we had gone around 190 constituencies, holding special meetings which were obviously hall meetings, and that gave me an opportunity to travel around more than 12,000 kilometers across West Bengal, into villages, small towns, interacting with people every day. That was an experience which was linked to my work as a researcher, or as getting into policy making, etc. And we were creating this narrative of Sonar Bangla, which has now become the center point of the elections. And from there, where it was like addressing a select gathering, not of party members, but in opinion makers and influencers, we did that throughout. And then from there, suddenly this jump into electioneering, into campaigning. I obviously knew and I know how an organization works, but this is getting into the nitty-gritty and brass tacks, and at the same time connecting with people, trying to go around. So it's quite an interesting transition in that sense, challenging also, and obviously it's quite different. So I'm perceived to be an intellectual by the electorate of Bolpur. But I'm going around, doing a lot of campaigning, and there's less of that intellectual work that I have to do now, or I'm able to do.
But would you call yourself an intellectual?
I don't know really. I mean, yes, perhaps a public intellectual, certainly. And most of my work in the BJP since I was deputed to the party was focused on policy advocacy, on research, on publications and all that. And that was seen to be a very intellectual work in a political setup.
So you talked about Sonar Bangla. Can you describe what that is for our viewers?
You see, for the idea was that Sonar Bangla is a template, is an historic template in the history of Bengal, especially in the past. And Gurudev himself has spoken about Sonar Bangla. And the cultural and all-round and integral high point for Bengal, culturally, economically, socially and historically also. And a number of past thought leaders have spoken and referred to that era where Bengal was at a certain height culturally.
Thought leaders like?
Thought leaders like Gurudev himself, Bankim, to name a few, who spoke and referred to this in their own way. Gurudev used the word Shunar Bangla, but everyone, starting from Vidyasagar, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, speaking about the need for reforms, but at the same time, this is what Bengal was and ought to be in future. Now, what we did was, because Prime Minister himself kept referring to this Shunar Bangla, we connected it to the reality of today and our political objective as well, and our political narrative. And a host of revolutionaries, Bengali revolutionaries, who kept also referring to this during the period of subjection. A long list of names of Bengali revolutionaries. So what we did in our campaign was, we said, look, the objective is Shunar Bangla. And what is Shunar Bangla? That we, in various sectors, starting from economy to infrastructure to education to health to women empowerment, etc., and cultural recovery or preservation of our cultural centers, we want to reach a certain level of performance and get back West Bengal to be a number one state among states in India. And it's not that you it's not that you change the name of West Bengal to Bengal and it becomes B and it becomes the second state, so it is developed. This is the narrative that is often pushed. But we want West Bengal to get back to its past, in the sense, even after independence, economically and etc., it was at a certain height despite partition. We want to go back to that level.
Okay. Now, an article in the Outlook quoted you saying that the Bharatiya Janata Party is planning a series of intellectual sessions in the small towns across the state over the coming month to create discussions around restoration of Bengal's culture. I was curious about these meetings. So, how many of these meetings did you have, and what were the sort of issues that cropped up when you were talking to people? What did they mean by cultural restoration?
You see, very interesting, like as I mentioned, so these meetings took place from November onwards and more organized in a more organized way from December onwards. And we managed to cover 190 constituencies. There were a group of 40 speakers who fanned out across the state. I myself individually covered 80 constituencies and addressed about more than 100 meetings. And there were a number of intellectuals who had joined this effort. Some of them are candidates today. And we teamed up either in twos or threes or single, and we went around the state. It was a very interesting outreach, and the objective was not to fill up your hall. And we had prepared a very strict SOP. So it had to be a hall meeting. You had to have numbers which were restricted between 150 to 200, and there would be time for interaction with the audience, and the audience would comprise, majority of the audience would comprise of influencers, opinion makers of that area, of that locality or assembly, and not to be filled up by party workers.
So these were really regular.
Very regular. Every day we did. These number of speakers went around and did. So this Shunar Bangla narrative ground was prepared.
But what were the...
you spoke about the cultural. Now, speaking from my personal experience and number of others also, I went around Bengal and the very interesting cultural centers across the state. Many of them lying derelict or neglected, which could form the nucleus or the center of that region, as well as, get back to what it was in the past. For example, in Fulia, you have Kirtibas, who had written the Ramayana in Bangla. You have his Asthi Samadhi. His ashes are kept there in a small mutt. But that ought to have been a center, and that banyan tree still stands where it is said that he wrote the Ramayana. Now that could be, and it is an attraction for thousands of people of that area as a place of worship where they congregate. You have melas and all that. But there is absolutely no kind of state support for these places, where at least some kind of support where they can in the long run develop as nodal centers, and I say life centers of that region. So our narrative was, if we could develop these places in this manner, people of the area would be benefited. For example, Lal Gola. I went to Lal Gola, where it is said Bankim sat and wrote had the inspiration for the for the Mahabharata, for the Bande Mataram. And there is that Kali Mandir there, where that the posture of Kali there is very interesting. She has her hands like this, two hands like this, and the other two hands like this. And till before independence, she had no weapons in her hand. And Bankim stayed there as the guest of the Maharaja of Lalgola when he was hounded by the British for a period. And that's where, so his room is still there, and that mandir is still there. Lalgola itself is, they say, and I met scholars there. It's very interesting, wherever I went, we made it a point to meet such scholars, local scholars who did research of that area. Now, I met scholars there. There was this very interesting, bright young scholar who has done a fabulous research. He's a school teacher, but he's done a fabulous research on how the setting of Bande Mataram is the Lalgola, the Lalgola precincts of the Maharaja. That could be developed as a...
Okay, so you are talking about...
Many such examples are there.
I got that. This is an example of basically restoring your heritage. But I am keen on knowing that in these intellectual sessions, what were the... So this is the sort of cultural restoration that was talked about, that places of historical importance should be revived.
One aspect of it. This was one aspect of it. And our continuous proposition was that these cultural centers can also... bring in a lot of prosperity in their own areas if they are developed and focused upon. This was one aspect. But infrastructure, health, economy, agriculture, women empowerment, youth, all these also were dimensions in these discussions. And basically what we said was, and nowhere did we find people contradicting us, because it was a free discussion. Nobody said, no, we don't agree with you, because they could have. We said for the last 50 years, after Dr. Bidhan Chandra Rai passed away in 62, any dispensation which has come till date has not given Bengal a roadmap, which Dr. B.C. Roy had given. Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee had a vision, even as Central Minister for Industry, a roadmap for Bengal that in the next 10 years we would want this state to develop in this way in all these sectors. I said, this is what we are proposing. We say we want a long-term roadmap for the state. Sectoral. Okay. And this 11,000 crore cultural fund, so to say, which has been announced in our manifesto, I believe it's because of this huge input that we kept giving.
Now, I want you to respond to two questions. One is, when you talk of cultural restoration, the BJP today, by a lot of intellectuals, is accused of destroying Bengal's culture rather than restoring it. So how would you respond to that? And secondly, when you speak about intellectualism, your party members like, say, Dilip Ghosh and all, they've said things about intellectuals in a way that, I think it was a speech where he said that inko chappal maro or something. So it's seen as a party which is actually is not very comfortable with the word intellectual. So how does that sit in with the narrative in Bengal?
The first question.
My first question was that many of your critics and many of the intellectuals would accuse the BJP of destroying Bengal's culture rather than restoring it.
Yes. You see, I mean, for example, there was this effort to say that even Jai Shri Ram is not a Bengali slogan or, But as I said, in Bengal you have one of the greatest translators of Ramayana, who made it actually turned it into a social movement. So in fact what has happened is that there's this entire subaltern religious sentiment and emotion which was completely suppressed by the left, and which was not allowed to find expression even under the TMC till we came into the picture. So the Matwas now realize that yes, they have a certain assertion that they can make, which is a positive assertion. The Bagdis, the Bauris have the distinct religious approach, which is linked to the larger Hindu umbrella. But all these years, all these decades, this identity was kept aside. Now, we say that is the essential identity of Bengal as well. I mean, why should I not go to Lalgola and think of Bankim and Bande Mataram and its link with the entire religious, atmosphere there? So I think it is on the other hand, what Bengal's culture is not certainly is to call others outsiders, that you can't come, you can't do politics in Bengal, you can't speak, I mean if you can't speak in Bengali you are an outsider. This was never there in Bengal. I mean even in the height of left rule, I must say, we never had this kind of an approach of outsiders and insiders in Bengal. This is antithetical to essentially Bengali culture. So I think it's very clear that the BJP is in fact reinforcing Bengal's culture.
And what would you say to the BJP's image as such of a party which is not very comfortable with the word intellectuals, because it's thrown around as an abuse ki oh intellectual log hain ya pseudos hain. So how does that fit in, like your...
I have gone around Bengal. In fact, I find people here in Bolpur quite warmly welcoming me, because perhaps they think because I'm an intellectual and I have... In fact, I have not come across this feeling in Bengal.
But nationally, the BJP's rhetoric has been, not very comfortable with the idea of...
What really do you think? I think it's just a few, maybe individuals, leaders, as you mentioned. Maybe some individual leaders who have who have expressed personally that point of view, but some public outburst or something. But in general, in a party where, where Arun Jaitley has been there, where Mr. Shah has continuously, in fact, encouraged a lot of these, the exhibitions, library. In fact, BJP is the only party which initiated a library movement across the country, established libraries in its own party offices. I don't think that really sticks now. There was a time when it was a fad to say that BJP is an anti-intellectual party. But I think that is very clearly shifting. Even for the case of the Sangh, there are so many young scholars coming up, writing about the Sangh, giving a perspective, taking forward, taking positions on various dimensions of history. So I think I'm sure it's changing. It's not like when, Conrad Elst had started writing his books. At that period, in the 90s or in the mid-90s or early 2000, perhaps it was like that. But I'm sure, I see that it's changing.
Now, I just wanted you to define for me Bengali Hindutva, because I've heard of this a lot in BJP offices. There is a sense that there is an arrival of Bengali Hindutva and it's here to stay, and is distinct from, say, what Hindutva means in UP or Bihar or the Hindi heartland. What are your views on that?
You see, in Bengal, the Hindutva has a very distinct flavor. It has a very, as I say, if you go out in the small towns, if you go out into the villages, you'll see that it has a uniqueness of its own. Starting even from the expressions also, from the expressions of worship, from the modes of worship, the way the Sandhya Arati is done, the way the Tulsi is worshipped, even these very small nuances. So there's something very unique about that identity. And at the same time, as I said, that it's very clear that after so many decades, there is a kind of a recovery of that identity and a re-expression. Now, historically, if you look at West Bengal, it's very clear that at that time when Shyama Prasad Mukherjee put forward the demand, he said that we do not support partition. But if, this is there in his public statement in March 1947 after the Tarakeshwar Hindu Mahasabha convention. He said that if partition is agreed to between the Congress and the Muslim League and Bengal is given away to Pakistan, then we demand the partition of Bengal. And he clearly enunciated there that we need a piece of land which is our own, Bengali Hindus, where we can continue with our mode of worship, our cultural expression, and our way of life and living, and where we form that portion where we are there protected for the future. So the founding idea of West Bengal also in a sense is rooted in its Bengali Hindu identity.
So then my follow-up question would be, in present-day India, in the BJP and RSS's imagination, is West Bengal a homeland for Hindus?
You see, the original founding idea of West Bengal is certainly that it was a land where the Bengali Hindus could live, protected, in dignity, safe, and if the Bengali Hindu became a refugee, would still find a place to come and stay. Certainly. And the founding idea of West Bengal is that it is a land for Bengali Hindus. But Shyama Prasad Mukherjee himself, in his statement, made it very clear that when we are under the Constitution of India, when it is the Indian Constitution, it is a homeland for everyone. It is part of India. And he demanded West Bengal because he wanted this to be part of India integrally and not go, obviously not the entire Bengal go there. So it's very clear, absolutely, that the founding idea is that it was founded so that the Bengali Hindus could stay, but it was not limited to the Bengali Hindus.
So what is the modern day idea? I would say
Modern day idea is very clear. As far as you ask me, if I have to say, is that we need to, all those living in West Bengal need to keep reminding themselves of why Bengal became West Bengal. We should not forget that. Second is that being a product of partition and not of having an exchange of population on the eastern front, we continue to be plagued because of infiltration and because of the tensions that generated, continues to generate in the border districts. West Bengal is a border state and the entire length and breadth is the border. So obviously it's very clear here that we need to face the fact and handle infiltration and the tensions that it has generated.
okay, but my central question was the idea of West Bengal today.
Yes, and what has happened is in the last 40 years and especially in the last 10 years, there has been an going overboard as far as appeasement politics is concerned. That is denominational development which is based on community. And it's very evident that the majority has been neglected in the last 10 years in West Bengal. And there is a very concrete feeling that one finds this, especially beyond Kolkata.
But
Now that has to be rectified. It has to be recalibrated.
how will that be recalibrated?
Once we come in power, it will be recalibrated.
But by what modes?
It's already being recalibrated by the one who's actually gone overboard. So that's why in April 2012, within a year of coming to power, Mamata Banerjee announced stipends for imams. But it took her 9 years and it took her 9 years to realize that you need to also take care of the Purohits also in West Bengal. I mean, so there is a forced recalibration which is taking place. But it cannot...
She's been criticized for that a lot, for giving imams a stipend and not...
And then even the stipend for the Purohits, you announce for 8,000 Purohits suddenly after 9 years. What sense does it make? I mean, if you take Bolpur and surrounding areas, you will have 8,000 Purohits here itself.
But so Bengali Hindutva then is, in essence, it does work as Hindutva works at a national level, which means that exclusion of Muslims is sort of central to it. Because when you say that the idea of Bengal, the very origin of Bengal is of West Bengal is, as a birthplace, as a homeland for Hindus.
Hindus. I cannot deny that, you see, because that's a fact. It's for the Bengali Dalit Hindus, for the Bengali Hindus in all aspects. That cannot be denied. At least I cannot deny it. And I'm publicly on record having said this.
But you have a large Muslim population here. So what happens to...
Absolutely. Now the point is this, that development for all, appeasement to none, as Prime Minister says. We are very clear on that. I mean, we don't want denominational, as we say, Sampradaya Bhittik Unnayan. That development is dependent on which community you live. We cannot support that kind of an approach. And so, our point is that this overboard appeasement of the minorities must stop. And equal opportunity, equal application of the rule of law. Why is it that because I wear a fez, I don't have to wear an helmet? But since you are not wearing a fez and you don't wear an helmet, you are arrested or you are fined. Even at this micro level, the kind of discrimination that people have faced, especially in the last 10 years, has actually come up to, build up this sentiment, which cannot be denied and brushed away. The Indian Constitution, if it is applicable equally to everyone, it should be applicable equally to everyone in West Bengal.
So one of the things that I encountered again with conversation...
I be made to feel guilty that West Bengal was created for a homeland, as a homeland for Bengali Hindus. I did not ask you to go, but it was created for me because I was pushed out of my homeland. So please let me have my place. You also be there.
But India decided to be secular, right? Like our idea was that we are going to be a homeland for everyone.
Absolutely, but that secularism should have been applied to the Eastern Front. Why didn't Nehru not apply it to the Eastern Front? Secularism should have been, if there is you have exchange of population. I mean, you say you have an complete exchange of population on the Western Front, but for the Eastern Front, for the Bengali Hindu refugees, you say only relief, no rehabilitation, you will have to go back. What logic is that? That logic, till date, the Nehruvians have not been able to explain. Why is it that the Bengali Hindus were discriminated and that overnight, leaving their land, their homes, their heart, they had to turn refugees and sit on the platforms of Sialda station?
But is that a concern today? I mean, when you look at young people in Bengal, young Muslims, young Hindus, sure, it's important to know your history and maybe have arguments about history, but when you look at what you're, like Sonar Bangla, when you talk about that, your concerns, I think, for young people are very different, is to have jobs, have a sense of security, have also a peaceful environment around you, and not, which the politics of sort of otherization can jeopardize. So, I mean, do you think these are important concerns for young people? Arguments over history, understanding history is important, but
I mean, this question can be asked if you don't know if you have not felt the pains of partition. I mean, I'm just saying that because in Bengal, the pains of partition continues to be a very emotive issue. It is another matter that it was never discussed it was discussed in a certain way during a certain period. But it continues to be there even today. If you go around in Netaji Nagar and these areas where the refugees were rehabilitated, you continue to see the sense that it evokes even today. And so, yes, obviously you need job, you need industry, you need all this. But Bengal's history of partition and its impact on a majority of people, on their minds, continues to be an extremely emotive issue, even today. And those who say it is not, I think, they're just trying to brush under the carpet some fundamental questions.
So you think this is something that is a cause of anxiety among people here?
You see, why that anxiety is there? It's because of this over-appeasement politics, vote bank politics that has been perpetrated in the last 40 years. Had that not been done, this anxiety would have perhaps melted and diluted away.
Okay, suppose we agree to that, and let's say that appeasement politics has been done, and it's been done by left and TMC, and their reign, if it gets over, BJP comes to power. Is the BJP's idea to then just reverse what they had done, or is it to then move beyond that and look to a different kind of politics, which doesn't believe in appeasement or...
Exactly. So you have answered. I have also
not appeasement, but also not appeasing to the radical side of the Hindutva side. Like you have a candidate from Hindu Samati who's very, very his speeches are very, very problematic. He said
Devtanu, I think. Yeah. No, but why should his speeches be problematic? Because just because he talks of the actual reality on the ground. If you go to Nadia, the districts, not 24 Parganas, sometimes those who have actually gone in pockets, you would really have to ask yourself whether you are in India and whether the constitution applies here. So there is an angst.
In what sense?
The way the Hindu communities, the villages are targeted, the way the women are, targeted.
But isn't the violence more political?
No, but
it's more. What I understand, it's more party violence.
No, not at all. Yes, party violence is there. In a number of areas in Birbhum, it is party violence. See, there are two distinct, political lines, two distinct lines in Bengal. What you are referring to, exactly, there is party violence. And a number of my workers here in Ilam Bazar and those places, in fact, our present party president also, district president, they have had to leave their home, their villages, they are unable to enter them because Tara BJP kore, eta Trinamool village. That is there. And this is something very unique to Bengal, that you are thrown out of your village because you do a certain party. But in a large segment also, especially along the border areas, you are targeted and thrown out because you are a Hindu. And so, the gentleman you referred to, expresses that angst in his own way.
But so good, like places where there's majority Hindu would do that to Muslim. Isn't that a problem of majoritarianism, which the BJP should fight on both sides?
No, but that I have not come across majority Hindu villages doing this. I have not come across. Very few perhaps. But I've gone through villages where this has happened for the Hindus. So, I mean, one would have liked to hear this otherwise, but this is the reality of West Bengal. And I think this should be highlighted and spoken of. And then, what we are saying is exactly this, that we should go beyond appeasement and it should be equal application of rule of law for everyone. And that is exactly, Prime Minister has said this publicly in his large public meetings also. And we need to go beyond this, binary in West Bengal.
Okay. So I have last 3 quick questions. One is now TMC's, when the BJP distinguishes itself from TMC, saying that, we are a new party, we're going to change things, 30 of your candidates are from TMC. I think around many of them came in 2017, some of the popular ones today. So a lot of your party is basically TMC. So how is it going to be different from BJP?
294, 30.
No, but then there were also the ones that came in 2017.
2017 today.
Quite a bit.
2021. They have become more than BJP and they have become completely BJPized by now.
So once they leave TMC, they become BJP.
No, not that. You see, what?
And the TMC guys say that we threw away our corrupt guys and now they've gone to BJP.
No, they did not throw away till they joined us. They did not throw them away. And then what happens is if you see most of the popular mass leaders in the TMC have left them. If you look around today, there is no mass leader in the TMC except Mamata Banerjee. So anyone with a mass base, at a certain point, this was not the case before the rise of the nephew. It's post the rise of nephew. It's a Bengali Stalin phenomena kind of.
But the guys who've come from TMC can't be ideologically aligned to you. It's just siding with power, right?
When they come,
I mean, they're not like you who've been around, who've spent time researching or who've, really feels for.
Obviously, there are categories, but but when they come, they cannot be ideologically aligned. They come, but they become ideologically aligned.
How?
Over the years. I mean, if you look at Assam, you see how Himanta Biswa Sarma, I mean, the way he's completely integrated himself into the BJP system. And ideologically aligned, a person to whom the Karyakarta, the Pracharak, the Swayam Sevak, everyone can, reach out, knows that there's a way out, there's a solution, there's this camaraderie which has come up. In Bengal, with a number of leaders also who have joined us in 2017, this is the same feeling. Some who have just joined us will take some time, but I'm sure they'll integrate because our party structure it's an organized party. It's not a party which runs, revolves around a certain family or which has no structured chain of command or way.
But there's so much discontent within BJP now, with the workers being unhappy with seat distribution.
Discontent is natural or it is welcome because we are after all a democratic party. Our workers have right to express their angst and it's gradually also coming round. In the first few days, a number of few seats where workers were very upset. Even in Birbhum there were seats where workers were upset. Gradually they are all coming around.
Now I wanted to ask you that you've done your masters from Jadavpur. PhD from Jadavpur, so which is a left bastion again, and you're also contesting from what used to be at least left bastion. So being in Jadavpur, which is supposed to be left, how were you attracted to right-wing ideology? Like how did you?
No, but I studied. I got in touch. I came in touch with the RSS, with the Sangh when I was in college.
In Bengal.
So it was in Pondicherry when I grew up, and some of my teachers there were also Pracharaks in their past avatar. And that's how I got introduced to the RSS gradually. And then when I came to West Bengal, I got, so that was before Jadavpur.
But how were you attracted to this? I mean, what attracted you to the RSS or to the ideology of RSS? Especially because, you come from a state which was very left. And I guess most people...
I grew up in Pondicherry.
Still, I'm guessing there's some,
Many things. It's very
Some-
difficult to say how you got attracted, because the RSS gets into you.
How?
In many ways. I mean, right.
If you were to give me one example.
Very difficult to give one example, but just the way you identify with society, with people around you, with a certain section, especially the marginalized, with the way you identify with your country, with the causes, with national causes, national interests, national causes, societal causes. It just gives you this feeling of being beyond yourself. It's just that you have a certain sense that there is something more to do or to contribute than just to be oneself and just do one's little bit and that's it. You're happy, you're satisfied. So this sense of reaching out, this sense of going beyond yourself for a cause which is much larger than your own specific aims and objectives. I think to explain it a little philosophically, this is what attracted me to the RSS, and some of the best. I was fortunate to, and continue to be, to see some of the best pracharaks who have given 40 years, 60 years of their life from Maharashtra, gone and stayed put in Northeast in Assam and never have left that place, completely integrated themselves with the people there, have taken up one cause and continuously worked at it, and multifarious cause, and never expecting anything in return, never expecting any recognition, and not even wanting to come in the front and taking saying that this is because this is my contribution. So this kind of selflessness, all this a lot of these factors.
Interesting. And how are these factors? I'm curious because how it's true that a lot of RSS workers, I was talking to Dilip Ghosh also, he also in 80s went to Andaman and all that. What does the RSS do to inculcate these feelings? What is it that is it the party organizational structure? Is it literature? Is it a certain discipline? Like what exactly is it that sucks people into it?
We should do an interview on the RSS separately.
Okay, fine.
It has its own structure. It has its own training sessions.
Okay.
It has its literature. But I think the best way of absorbing from the RSS, it's from its pracharaks. I have at least understood and absorbed that much from them.
Now, quickly.
It requires a great degree of sturdiness to be able to do what many of them are doing.
What are the two main issues with which you are going to your voters in your constituency? What are the two things that you think you can fix for them?
You see, one is that it's now time that Bolpur, a town like Bolpur, which Gurudev had made his own, should become a leading or a model town, which it ought to have been, having such stalwart representatives in the past. And this is the 100th year of Vishwabharati's founding. So I think it's a very good opportunity to make a new beginning. Apart from the infrastructure, the town, and etc., the very nitty-gritty issues of daily life which are there, the entire surrounding, it's a huge rural population as well, where you have a number of tribal communities, each very unique in their in terms of their cultural expression and skills. All this put together, Bolpur can actually become a very unique hub of culture, a very unique hub of education, and at the same time what is required is to expand the scope of employment generation here, in the sense that this town cannot continue to be dependent on just one university. There has to be other avenues. There has to be other centers here which ought to be developed. And in all, a kind of an integrated, town, where which becomes that kind of it has its cultural heritage, its educational heritage, as well as its tribal and rural heritage. And then if you inject industry into the surrounding areas, this could be a very unique model actually. That's something which has always exercised my mind.
Last question. We asked a bunch of people here because it's Shanti Niketan what they think of the Prime Minister's beard. And we got some very interesting answers from them, but a lot of them thought that he cannot appropriate Tagore, and that's a lot of what Bengali intellectuals quote unquote told us, that they are complete polar opposites, and BJP's ideology and Gurudev's ideology is completely
Intellectuals imagine a lot. Prime Minister has never said he's trying to. He just likes, perhaps he's growing a beard, he's liking it. I've never even imagined that he looks like Tagore.
There's no thinking behind it that he's looking like Tagore.
I think he must have some personal reasons for growing a beard. And I must tell you, I preferred the previous look that he had. This beard is getting a bit too long. And I wish we get to know why he's growing it and when he's going to go back to his old look. So I'm sure. But I think some of these Bengali intellectuals who have spoken to you, they are, I think, dreaming too much or thinking too much.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much.